All characters in this story are over the age of 18. The wind ruffled my hair, and my eyes reflected the bottomless blue of the mountain lake. In this reflection, I saw not only the majestic peaks, but also my sister, Elena. Her gaze, full of anxious excitement, seemed to echo my own feelings. We were alone, lost in the wilderness, and this isolation, this detachment from the familiar world, was the catalyst for something forbidden, something that forever changed the way we saw each other. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Elena's voice broke the silence, in which it seemed you could hear our hearts beating. I nodded, not taking my eyes off the lake. Words seemed superfluous, and what words could describe this breathtaking beauty? The mountains loomed around us like giant guards, their snowy peaks glistening in the setting sun. The surface of the lake, smooth as a mirror, reflected this splendor, creating the illusion of infinity. "Do you remember how we used to dream of being here alone when we were kids?" Elena asked, sitting down beside him on a large boulder. "Of course I remember," I answered, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. "We thought it was the most amazing place on earth." "And it is," Elena whispered, her hand touching mine casually. The touch, light, almost imperceptible, sent a jolt of electricity through me. I pulled back sharply, startled by my own reaction. What was that? Why was I so acutely aware of my sister's simple touch? "I'm sorry," Elena murmured, and I felt her tense up. "It's okay," I replied, trying to speak calmly. "I was just thinking." This trip was supposed to be a farewell to a carefree summer, a last splash of childhood before we both went our separate ways, starting our adult lives. I was leaving to study in the capital, and Elena was staying in our small town. We were always close, but lately I began to notice some changes in her. She became more withdrawn, thoughtful, and there was a sadness in her eyes that I couldn't explain. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, interrupting my musings. "About the future," I answered, avoiding a direct answer. "About how things would change." "Yes," Elena agreed, "everything will change." We were silent for a long time, listening to the whisper of the wind and the splash of the waves. The sun had already disappeared behind the mountains, and there was a chill in the air. I took a warm jacket out of my backpack and threw it over Elena's shoulders. She smiled back, and at that moment I realized that something important had happened between us, something that would forever bind us by an invisible thread. "You know," Elena said, looking into my eyes, "I'm afraid." "Of what?" I asked. "Of the future," she answered, "of breaking up, that we'd never be as close as we are now." I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close to me. In that moment, all doubt vanished. I knew there was more than brotherly love between us, but the mountains had decided otherwise, revealing to us a secret, the burden of which we now bore together. A secret whose name is love, forbidden, dangerous, but so inevitable. And we both knew it. I was 20, Elena was 18. The difference is only 2 years, but as a child, those 2 years seemed like an abyss. I am the older brother, responsible, thoughtful, sometimes even too serious. Elena is the younger sister, frivolous, cheerful, living one day at a time. We were always different, like day and night, two opposites attracted to each other by the invisible power of kinship. "Andre, why do you always stay at home?" Elena exclaimed, bursting into my room with a whirlwind of energy. "The weather is so nice outside. Let's go for a walk." "I have to study for my exams," I answered, keeping my eyes on my textbook. "Exams are still a month away." Elena didn't stop. "And life goes by. You've forgotten how to have fun." "And you've forgotten that studying is an important part of life, too," I retorted, trying to hide a smile. Our arguments were part of our normal interactions. We poked fun at each other. We argued, we made up, but we always knew that we could rely on each other. This unwavering belief in our bond was the foundation of our relationship. Our parents, tired of the noise and rush of the big city, a few years ago decided to move to a small town lost among the mountains. For me, the move was a real blow. I lost my friends, my familiar environment, and for a long time, I could not adapt to the new life. "Don't be sad," Elena told me, seeing my depressed state. "It's good here too. Can you imagine what mountains are here? We can go hiking." "I don't care about hiking," I mumbled back. I had to think about my future, about going to university. "And hiking will help you relax and gain strength," Elena urged me. "You'll see, you'll love it." Elena, on the contrary, quickly settled into her new place. She easily made acquaintances, explored the neighborhood, and didn't seem to miss her old life at all. She was the one who suggested a trip to a mountain lake that her new friends had told her about. "It's incredibly beautiful there," she chirped enthusiastically. "The water is as clear as glass, and all around are mountains. Can you imagine?" "Sounds good," I admitted, though I was still hesitant. "But how far is it? How far is it?" "A few hours," Elena said. "But what views! We'll take amazing pictures." I sighed. It was useless to argue with Elena. She had already made up her mind, and I, as always, gave in to her persuasions. We began to pack our backpacks, to think over the route, to stock up on food. Our parents, delighted by our enthusiasm, gave us some valuable advice and guidance. "Take care of yourself," said my mom, hugging us goodbye. "And don't forget to call." "Don't worry, we'll be careful," Elena smiled. "Andre, you're in charge," reminded my father. "Look after your sister." "Okay, Dad," I nodded. We set off, not realizing what trials awaited us and how much this trip would change our lives. We walked into the mountains like brother and sister, bound by ties of kinship and habit. But the mountains, with their wild beauty and silent wisdom, had a very different lesson in store for us. A lesson of love, passion, and forbidden attraction that will forever remain in our memories. The trail was serpentine, climbing up, then descending into gorges. The sun was blazing, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and mountain herbs. We walked in silence, each of us immersed in our own thoughts. I tried to concentrate on the surrounding beauty, but my gaze kept returning to Elena. She walked ahead, light and graceful, her long hair fluttering in the wind. She was wearing short shorts and a tight t-shirt, emphasizing her slim figure. I caught myself admiring her and quickly looked away, afraid of my own audacity. "Are you tired?" Elena asked, turning back to me. "No, I'm fine," I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. "It won't be long now," she encouraged me. "We'll be there soon." We continued on our way. The higher we climbed, the more picturesque the views became. The mountains opened up before us in all their majestic beauty. Finally, we came to a clearing that overlooked a mountain lake. "Here it is," Elena exclaimed, spreading her arms. "What beauty!" And indeed, the sight was breathtaking. The lake, like a precious stone, lay in a bowl of mountains, surrounded on all sides by rocks and forest. The water was incredibly clear and transparent, reflecting the blue of the sky and the green of the trees. "It's amazing," I whispered, unable to tear my gaze away. We walked down to the lake and set up camp in a small clearing by the water. We set up our tents, built a fire, and cooked dinner. As the evening cooled, we sat by the fire, wrapped in our blankets. "You know," Elena said, looking at the dancing flames, "I've never felt so calm." "Me neither," I agreed. "It feels like all the problems are down here." We sat in silence for a long time, listening to the crackling of the fire and the rustling of leaves. The night was dark and moonless, the sky sprinkled with stars. I felt Elena's gaze on me and could not understand what it meant. There was something new and unfamiliar about it, something that both attracted and frightened me. "Andre," Elena said quietly, I want to tell you something." "What?" I asked, feeling my heart beat faster. I've been wanting to tell you for a long time," she continued, not daring to look up. "I like you, not as a brother." Her words came out of the blue. I was stunned, not knowing what to say. My mind was in chaos. I'd always loved Elena, but it was a brotherly love, tender and caring. And what I was feeling now, it was different. It was attraction, passion, forbidden desire. "Lena," I whispered in a hoarse voice, you're my sister." I know," she replied, tears streaming down her cheeks, "but I can't help it. I love you." I pulled her to me and hugged her tightly. At that moment, all inhibitions, all morals collapsed. It was just us, our feelings, our love. We kissed greedily, passionately, as if afraid of losing each other. We gave ourselves to our feelings without thinking about the consequences, without thinking about the future. That night, under the silent gaze of the stars, we crossed the line, beyond which began a new, uncharted territory. The territory of forbidden love, which became our heaven and our hell. We spent the rest of the night in each other's arms, whispering words of love and tenderness. With the first rays of the sun, we woke up and, as if frightened by what had happened, we pulled away from each other. There was an awkward silence between us. "What now?" Elena asked, looking at me with frightened eyes. I don't know," I admitted honestly. "But I do know one thing, I don't want to lose you." "I don't want to lose you either," Elena whispered. We spent another day by the lake, swimming, sunbathing, talking. We tried not to touch the subject of last night, but the tension between us was palpable. We both realized that our lives would never be the same again. "We should get back," I said as the sun began to set. "Yes," Elena agreed. "It's time." We packed up and headed back. The descent was much harder than the ascent. We were silent, each of us immersed in our own thoughts. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I was sure of one thing. Our secret would remain between us forever. The secret of a forbidden love born in the mountains, by the shores of a mountain lake. A love that had become our burden and our happiness. The descent from the mountains was much harder than we had anticipated. Dusk was falling fast, as if the mountains themselves wanted to hide us from the world. The trail that had seemed so easy and attractive on the way up now became a winding and dangerous snake, ready to throw us into the abyss at any moment. We were tired, hungry, and cold, but we persevered. The silence between us became heavy and tense, as if reflecting our inner feelings. "How much farther?" Elena asked, her voice shaking with fatigue. "I don't know," I answered, trying to make out the trail in the fading dusk. "I think we've lost our way." Suddenly, Elena tripped over a protruding root and fell backward with a shriek, twisting her foot. "Andre!" she cried out. I can't get up." My heart squeezed with fear. I rushed to her and helped her up. Her ankle was swelling rapidly, turning bluish. "Damn it," I mumbled, examining her injured leg. "We're not going to make it to town now." "What are we going to do?" Elena asked, her voice shaking with pain and despair. "We need to find shelter," I said firmly. "Let's try to get to the cave we saw on the climb." We struggled to reach the cave, which was small but deep enough to protect us from the cold night wind. I made a fire, and we sat down side by side, warming ourselves by the fire. Elena was crying quietly, in pain. I examined her leg more closely and realized that a fracture was possible. "Lena," I said, looking into her eyes, "I have to go get help. I'll run to the nearest village and call the rescue team." "No!" Elena shrieked, grabbing my arm. "Don't go! I'm scared to be alone! Bean! Please don't leave me!" Her words, full of desperation and fear, cut me to the core. I couldn't leave her. Not in this state. Not in this wild and desolate land. "All right," I said, pulling her close to me. "I'll stay. We'll spend the night here, and we'll decide what to do in the morning." We spent the night in the cave, huddled together for warmth. The fire cast bizarre shadows on the cave walls, creating an illusion of unreality. Elena's proximity, her trembling body, her ragged breathing, all of it, fueled the fire of desire I'd been struggling to suppress. "Andre," Elena whispered, her voice weak and hoarse. I'm so cold." I hugged her tighter, feeling my body fill with unbearable desire. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, that it was wrong, that it was forbidden, but I couldn't fight myself anymore. I kissed her. That kiss was desperate, full of pain and fear and inevitability. It was everything we had kept from each other for so long. That night, in the darkness of the cave, we crossed the line beyond which began the territory of forbidden love, a love that became our curse and our salvation. The next morning, the pain in Elena's leg subsided. The swelling had gone down, and she was able to step on her foot, albeit with difficulty. "I think I can walk," she said, stepping gingerly from foot to foot. "Careful," I said, holding her hand. "Take your time." We walked slowly down the mountain, avoiding eye contact. There was an awkward silence between us that we were both afraid to break. We knew that something irreparable had happened that would change our lives forever. The night in the cave was the culmination of our forbidden love, the point of no return, after which there was no turning back. We returned to the city exhausted, as if after a long illness. Our parents, alarmed by our long absence, peppered us with questions, but we kept silent, citing fatigue and bad weather. Elena limped, and my mother insisted on seeing a doctor, but Elena refused, saying she had just twisted her leg. I supported her, fearing that the doctor might suspect something wrong. In the following days, we tried not to meet, avoiding each other. Each of us was absorbed in our own thoughts and worries. What had happened in the mountains became our shared secret, a heavy burden that we now bore together. Soon I left for the capital, and Elena stayed at home. We rarely called each other. Our conversations were short and restrained. We both realized that our bond was forever changed, that we could no longer be just brother and sister. There was now a wall of guilt, fear, and forbidden love between us. A few years passed. I graduated from university, started working. Elena also left her hometown, having entered an institute in another city. We hardly ever saw each other, but I often thought about her, remembering our trip to the mountains, our mountain lake, our secret. One day, I received a letter from her. She wrote that she was getting married soon. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone had stabbed me in the heart. I realized that I had lost her forever, that our forbidden love would remain only a bitter memory. I didn't go to her wedding. I couldn't watch her become another man's wife. I preferred to stay in my apartment, immersed in the memories of our hike, our secret, our forbidden love that became our curse and our happiness. A love that will forever be locked deep in our hearts like a reflection in a mountain lake. A reflection that no one can ever see but ourselves.